From sandy beaches to spotlit superstars, Dubai has it all, as we can see here on the second day of the Dubai International Film Festival 2015. Now in its 12th cycle, the festival has seen increased international interest. And it's more than just movies. The festival hosts daily forums about media matters that matter. Today's forum, titled Beyond Digital, was presented by PwC. The first speaker was Philip Shepherd, a partner and entertainment and media Middle East leader at PwC.
We've got the next wave, which are big countries that are growing fast, and it's not unsurprising that it's China, Brazil, India, slow-growing, smaller countries that are kind of pretty mature, and we are in the Middle East and Africa sitting around in these up-and-comers. And I guess if you aggregated all the Middle East countries together, we might just sneak into the next wave. Just some interesting stats here. The US, on its own, is as big as the next 5 top countries. So this market is still dominated by what goes on, when you look at it globally, dominated what goes on in the US. Saying that, China is growing faster, but everyone's got a hell of a long way to go before they get anywhere near the scale of the US. And we can just look at this in terms of the overall growth rates. I think in this region, and we've lumped it Middle East and Africa, but we're seeing this as being the fastest growing of all the sort of regions in entertainment and media spend. Possibly not driven by the Middle East itself, but driven by Africa, and within Africa, Nigeria, which is by far and away the largest country. But overall, I think if you're a sort of global media player and looking for where you're going to start investing some of your dollars, getting an understanding of Africa would be something we would definitely advise. But overall, I mean, and Latin America is another, very, very strongly growing market. And of course, underpinning that is many different drivers. And we've kind of broken it up into 3 kind of distinct areas. And you might clearly understand advertising as a media spend. Consumer spend is people buying TV subscriptions, going to concerts, buying music, etc. And access, is that a media spend? Well, we put it there because currently in this current environment and over the last 10 years, the growth of media spend is quite heavily correlated to the growth and speed of access. And certainly the move into digital is entirely dependent on the growth and the penetration of access. So access is predicted to grow at the faster rate than all those growths, 8.8%. This is globally. And within that, it's mobile is by far and away the fastest growing platform. I think by 2019, we're assuming that of every $3 spent, $2 will be in mobile. But interestingly, consumer is still the largest part of media spend. I mean, everyone's been very fearful of piracy and the lack of monetization of digital, but I guess what we're seeing is that the non-digital part of consumer is still very resilient, and it's interesting in many areas. You've kind of got this point where it's kind of plateaued, and sometimes the non-digital spend is growing. And I guess this is the theme I'll pick up a bit later on. But we're certainly seeing consumers beginning to sort of really make some choices about how they consume their media, and sometimes they don't want it always in digital. Live events, sharing, and collaboration is proving a very important driver, and you can't do that always just through digital. So looking at this chart, this is trying to kind of looking at it globally on the overall spending. Probably not too dissimilar to previous years. We're still seeing internet advertising really driving the overall growth based on that platform of fast penetration of broadband access, both mobile and fixed. Video games, I guess a few years ago people were thinking that was kind of something that was, the platform games are passing away, but it's been very strong growth, particularly around those on social media platforms. The rest are sort of, I suppose it's film entertainment, all these other ones that we may have thought would be all hit by the sort of growth of digital are still performing strongly. I guess the area that isn't is newspaper publishing. And strangely, it's, magazine publishing is actually, we're seeing some small growth there. Newspapers are in a bad place, because the substitutes, whether they're as good quality or not, but the substitutes you can get are just too enormous. So for them to be able to continue with their circulation growth and grow advertising is proving, and certainly in mature markets, extremely challenging. Magazines have actually made that transition to online a lot better, and I think because they've got some differentiated content. So if you've got some good editorial content in magazines and you put it online, they're beginning to make that switch from sort of non-digital, digital, and monetize that, which is why it's got some limited growth. The other ones are proving relatively resilient if you're thinking that sort of average GDP will be around 2 or 3%, which is, so radio is holding its own, for example. It's got a place in the market, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So looking at the Middle East and Africa, well, all our numbers are a lot higher. Again, probably driven mainly by what we're seeing in Africa, and Nigeria in particular is one of the fastest growing markets. We're proving that we're above average in TV advertising still. And we'll maybe talk about that on the panel a bit, about the resilience of that in the region. Pay TV side is still, TV subscriptions is still kind of relatively underpenetrated across some of the bigger markets, and so that's forecast to grow quite strongly. And if you think about Nigeria and Saudi Arabia, there's fast-growing, consumer spendability and very low pay TV penetration. And I don't know if anybody here is from the publishing industry, but clearly it's the same global trend is sitting here across the region. And actually, if you look at the mature parts of the GCC, you'll see quite a lot of negative figures for that. So, of course, in countries like Egypt, where you don't have such a strong digital penetration in publishing, you're still relying quite heavily on the print side. Just sort of picking out a couple of stats for the UAE and KSA. So I remember saying this last year, and I think Dimitri will comment on this in the panel. We are forecasting mobile internet advertising for the UAE, probably one of the fastest in the world at 37% growth. Albeit from a limited base. I said that last year. I haven't dared look to see what's happened in 2014 to see whether we're moving in the right direction. And as I said, if I keep saying this every year, one day we're going to be right, because all the elements are in place in this region or in this country for very strong internet advertising. You've got very high penetration of smartphones and tablets. You've got very high penetration of social media. But there is some stickiness, I'm aware of that, and I think Dimitri will tell us all about that from the advertiser's perspective. Same thing in KSA. We've mentioned filmed entertainment. Now you're probably thinking, I'll come on in a minute, filmed entertainment, that doesn't exist in Saudi Arabia. There are no cinemas, or maybe there's five or six. So it is coming from a very low base, but this is all electronic home video, which is one of the fastest growing parts of film and entertainment. And just to reinforce where things are looking a bit bleak in those two countries, newspaper publishing negative, and music, strangely, the sort of switch to digital or the lack of monetization of that is having quite a big impact on the music sector here, not compensated by enough value in live events. Oh, okay, themes, right. So I suppose when trying to distill tons of things that are happening around, I think what we're really clearly seeing, and maybe I'm going to stick with the second one, which is that consumers, what's really clear is that they're kind of a bit ambivalent as to whether they don't think of it as digital or not digital. They think of it as what is the best for them, and it doesn't. What platform is it best for them? Is it a tablet? Is it in a newspaper or whatever? And so this view that the consumer is kind of making some kind of differentiation is, I guess, proving not to be the main driver. It's their flexibility. They don't want to find that something that they're used to having on their laptop or on their phone just won't work on their tablet, or they can't get it on the TVs. It's having this kind of flexibility, and that's a challenge for people who produce this content, because you're going to have to put this on, to, have an efficient way of putting it across many different platforms so that certainly the consumer user experience is seamless. And it sounds easy and trite to say that, but I know it's extremely difficult to make that happen. And the danger is extremely difficult and potentially quite expensive. But certainly, if you think about this sort of younger generation who are now probably coming through into the workplace, they kind of just expect it. And they'll make their choices. And this then sort of really leads to the first one, is that for advertisers, you really do have to think about how you're going to adapt to meet to address the fact that your consumers, the people you're trying to address, are doing things in a very wide variety of ways. And I know we'll talk about this again with Dimitri, but it feels in this region we're quite traditional still, and it's been quite challenging to make those changes. So that's clearly something that is a kind of big theme of what we've been looking at. And finally, I think we pulled this because it's very relevant really to what we're doing today, and we're in the film side, is what to do with your IP and how to make more money out of that. Clearly in this region there's a lot of unlocking of IP value, certainly Western IP value, in the theme parks and attractions. Should there be more for local IP here? And that's what we're talking about with Mohamad. So very quickly, we'll just go through the sort of advertising side. I think we've sort of seen this. This is not fairly reflective of what we said for the global spend. I think we've been talking about this sort of transition to the point that, when TV advertising has tended to be the dominant platform, and what we're showing here is the figures in 2019, the proportion split between TV and internet. But within the TV ones are all where the broadcasters or the channels have got their channels on the internet. So we've done it as a platform rather than as an ownership of the content rather than a platform. If you looked at it the other way around and said what platform, where's the money spent on what platform, internet would significantly exceed TV by 2019 on a global basis, and you can see the kind of switch in shares that is happening. And I think it's kind of incontrovertible that ultimately the main platform for advertising will be the internet, as all measurement tools and all the ability to be able to understand what's going on improve. Where do we sit in this region? Well, again, backing up what I said before, we're saying probably UAE. We're sort of forecasting 52% of the spend in UAE will be on digital, and it's the fastest rate of change of growth. And Saudi Arabia also got pretty high growth, both coming from a pretty low base. So challenges, but I think we're kind of optimistic that this will be something that's going on. And kind of what's driving it? Well, it's mobile, and we're saying by 2016, this is the global figures, that the mobile internet will be greater than the fixed internet. So again, if you've got a content provider, you've probably got to think mobile first before you think of fixed, not the other way around. And again, I think when I first started this, we were really chuffed that the mobile growth had exceeded classified. Well, we're saying within the next couple of years, mobile will be the second highest value in internet advertising, growing at kind of 23% per annum. And I say by the time we get to that stage, we're going to struggle to differentiate mobile from fixed, because of course what you're doing on the mobile is still the same stuff. It's still search and it's still classified, etc. But at the moment we're kind of keeping them separate. And keep an eye on video. One of the other fastest growth areas, and a kind of the key theme that we've seen as a huge growth in advertising on things like YouTube, etc. So probably even bolder in the UAE around this. So this is what it would look like if our forecast for mobile internet penetration actually happened. It would take it kind of almost twice as much as all the others added together will be in mobile. I guess, Dimitri, for your business, that will be a good result. So we talked a little bit about consumers and this flexibility, and I'm going to particularly sort of direct it around film. A number of years ago, we kind of thought box office and cinema was a kind of declining decline trend, it's growing. And so the box office spend, this is what we're spending in cinemas, is got kind of very, very respectable growth. And it's driven by kind of two things: growth in number of people going to the cinema still, and I guess is reinforcing this fact that actually people do want to do things, it's shared entertainment rather than to do it at home, and admission prices is growing. And kind of behind that, and I think we talked about this last year, is China. China are building 100 cinemas a week. And so, it's just phenomenal stats. Still quite a bit of time before it overtakes the US. And I think this will be quite, it'll come up next on this thing. This kind of shows, I think another thing which is very valuable, and Jayant will pick up on this later on, physical home video, that's DVDs, etc., continually declining. I mean, in many mature markets, you've seen things like Blockbuster and others have kind of disappeared from the high street. In markets where there isn't great internet broadband access, clearly it still has a role. But inexorably, as broadband rolls out across the world, I think we're saying nearly 3.5 billion will have broadband internet access by 2019. That will continue declining. But home video, electronic home video, OTT, streaming, growing very, very healthily. And I think that's the area that we kind of continually underestimated when we've looked at these forecasts. And then I guess we're seeing that, and this is some stats from I think some surveys in the US, that people just are making some choice about where they want to see stuff. So I think they want to do it to their own schedule. I mean, maybe this is just sort of motherhood and apple pie now to many of us here in this region, because we're used to sort of downloading stuff when we want to. But this is these are quite big shifts in other countries in the rest of the world. And many people want to see these new releases at home as well. And so it's interesting. Some of the Hollywood studios are opening up digital windows to just show these things directly to consumers. So there's a shift, and it doesn't mean there's money leaking out of the system. It's just you've got to be kind of much more adaptable. I suppose just to show the sort of highlight, we talked about sort of Saudi as being one of the sort of fastest growth, but it's coming from a very low base. So look, at the moment, those stats are saying, on average, $1 per population of Saudi is spent on filmed entertainment, $15 in the UAE. Well, the king of the pie is the USA at 110. So we are seeing that the fact that you can't go to cinema there will mean that the sort of home entertainment side, the electronic home video, will be very fast growth, which is where we got it at kind of 18%, so probably one of the fastest in the region. UAE kind of sort of average, a bit smaller. So now looking at the sort of my final sort of section on IP. So clearly there's a challenge people face for many years, is you've invested in all this content and you sell it to TV channels, you get subscription money and you get some advertising, and then somebody nicks it. And it's leaked. In many of the countries there's a hell of a lot of piracy, and there's clearly you can maybe do some licensing and sell toys and things like that. But what we're talking about in this region is there's a huge push to develop Middle East or UAE or even Dubai as a leisure and entertainment, leisure attraction destination. And I guess it's been clearly proven that with sort of branded IP, then you've got significantly enhancing your chances of success, assuming quality and delivery and everything else is equal. So we thought, given here there's a lot of brands that are being probably sold out on channels here. We've got our own local brands. What's it all about? Is there really an opportunity? And why, I suppose, what's the prize? Well, Orlando, 73 million visits to a number of parks. It's run as a destination. And I think in other events where we've been talking about theme parks, why can't Dubai be like Orlando? Its geographic location is almost perfect with this huge, very increasingly wealthy or growing wealth population densities of China and India and Europe, kind of only within 6 hours flight. And at the moment, we're aiming in Dubai just for 20 million visitors by 2020. So, I mean, clearly a long way to go. But Orlando succeeded. Orlando City is nothing special, but it's succeeded because it's built this critical mass of parks. So while they compete with themselves, it's marketed as a destination. And it's got, based on all this kind of IP brands, which we see on the right-hand side. So what have we got coming in Dubai? And so if you don't know that Dubai Parks and Resorts is going to be opening in October 2016, then you clearly haven't been driving up and down the Sheikh Zayed Road down to Abu Dhabi very often. This is three major parks. Bollywood Park, which is using Bollywood IP. That's extremely innovative because there's nothing in the world that's attempted to do that. Legoland, which is clearly very well known as a concept, and Motion Gate, which is using DreamWorks, Sony, and Lionsgate, which is the Hunger Games IP. So kind of more of a traditional type of Hollywood IP. There's been an announcement around 20th Century Fox, which is using Simpsons and Madagascar. IMG World of Adventures, I think they've announced that sometime early next year, and they're running with Marvel, which is part of Disney IP, and Cartoon Network, and you've got Sega Republic. And clearly this is all kind of Western content IP for the people, I guess, for the attractions of the people providing this stuff. They're getting, a nice 5 or 6% royalty fee from doing it, and there's no piracy. You can stamp out on anybody copying your stuff elsewhere. There's been some instances in China where people have built kind of looky-likey type parks, but the government, are closing those down. And so what are we thinking is the opportunity here in the UAE? So this is our PwC forecast, but we reckon there's an addressable market. This doesn't mean everyone goes apart, but an addressable market of 45 million by 2021, so just after Expo. So this doesn't include an Expo effect. And so these are... This is including residents, it's including people who visit friends and family, so they're not sort of recorded in the hotel stats, and it's including the tourist numbers. And actually, there's a kind of virtual circle here, because I think our view is that to achieve the 20 million, Dubai needs these leisure attractions, because you need more things for people to do and for them to stay longer, to increase their length of stay. And just to put it into some sort of context, Orlando says 73 million. Hong Kong, through its theme parks and attractions, is running at 15 million. So, big city clearly should be achievable. And that's kind of, where thinking about the IP side of it, what we're saying, what is the makeup of the population here in the UAE? And I suppose this would be in the thesis around Bollywood parks. Not only have you got this enormous 1 billion population of Indian and Pakistanis sitting on your doorstep, of which 100 million are kind of wealthy enough to travel and to spend, but you've got a lot in the country already, and a kind of huge Asian indigenous population. And so and we'll talk about this with Mohamad, because one of the things that's also coming out in our research globally is that one of the key drivers is good, strong local content. And I suppose we've been such a dependency here in the Middle East on kind of Western brands. Are we missing a trick? And those of you who are Arabic and lived here for a while may remember Majid. It's still an existing comic character, and it's being relaunched, or has been relaunched as a TV channel. And Mohamad was, the idea of this is actually to really to drive this as a licensing brand across hopefully parks, merchandise, and everything like that. But it's a local character, which certainly for people of 30 and above would know extremely well. So to be proven, but there's also another thing. It may not be a secret, but Sesame Street, the local Sesame Street iftar Simpson, has again relaunched, mainly on YouTube channels, extremely successfully. But it's an Arabic characters are in there as well, and will this actually be the thing that's required to take these parks to the next stage? So, pillars of wisdom. those of you who know your history in Lawrence of Arabia, he had 7. My team who helped me prepare this presentation only thought I was worth 3. So I'm only going to go 3 pillars of wisdom. But I think one of them is clearly around creating this seamless customer or consumer experience across the platforms, across distribution devices. We've talked about it a lot, but we're seeing more evidence that it's going to be absolutely critical. The other thing that's critical is you've really got to recognize that mobile should be the center of any of your media strategy. It's if you sort of bolt on mobile to something to fix, then you'll have a compromise. And I think if you're starting to look at it now, you've really got to focus on the mobile first, and finding new ways to exploit this experience, your intellectual property, rather than sort of banging away around the piracy and worrying about the leakage, unable to monetize it because too much of it's free. Think of alternatives, because you have invested in these brands, and there is certainly in the Middle East and maybe other countries a huge market for kind of live shared entertainment, which is what theme parks and attractions and the family entertainment centres, Kidzania, that's what they're all about, and that's what people appear to be really crying out for. So that's the end of kind of what I was going to talk about. Jayant will, I hope it's the next slide, Jayant. I'll just check.
The second speaker was Jayant Bhargava, partner and head of digital media and entertainment Middle East at Strategy and. They talked about the global entertainment and media outlook for the next 5 years.
Thanks, Philip. I fall for this trap each year, which is 2 traps. First, being part of the first session after the opening party, just trying to keep awake. And second, following Philip Shepherd, who always runs into the time that I have. So I'm going to move very fast, trying to cover up for that. But before I start, let me ask, how many of you watched the movie yesterday at the opening ceremony? Great. So for those of you who did not get a chance to get the glimpse of the movie started with a scene where you have a little boy sitting in a room in front of a small television, captive. Now that would be a dream come true for any broadcaster, where you have linear television and only linear television accessible on a TV screen. Unfortunately, the world we live in today is extremely the opposite of what we saw in the movie yesterday. So, what's changing this world? Good news is that with everything happening around, which we all hear about, proliferation of devices, access, connectivity, people are spending more time on media, which is good for anybody working in this industry, because you have just a bigger pool of time and hopefully money to eat from. On the right-hand side, the time that is being spent on video is also increasing, as is the time being spent on media, and that time is being driven out of the increase on digital video devices as opposed to the television screen. The incremental time that people are spending is essentially driving a snacking culture across the world, including the Middle East. The incremental time is being spent on short-term, short-form videos, which are catching attention. But as you see on the right, that short-form videos haven't penetrated, if you may, the television set as of now. While many television sets that you see today are connected, but you haven't seen the crossover of the short-form videos in a big way on the television screen. They are being consumed, as you can see here, and short-form being on the pink color, the light pink color. You see them all across all devices outside of the television screen. However, having said that, anybody who's producing professional video content today understands and realizes the importance of distribution on platforms other than television. The eyeballs and the time that you get spent on a professional video content that might be first aired or burnt on television, the recall effect of that on other platforms is, in our view, close to 5 to 6 times that of television. So, outside, with all these trends happening, is money still there in pay television? And pay television being defined as the traditional bundled environment where you have a primary television service at the home. Is that still going to grow? So if you take a global view, there are pockets of growth within pay TV. And if you look at where this growth is, I mean, Middle East stands at a very good place where we still have a great upside in terms of penetration of the primary television service in the Middle East. If you look and compare that to North America, probably not. It's already highly penetrated. It's at 79%, and the opportunity for growth is not there. At the same time, you have significant number of, not a significant number, but a fair amount of numbers of cord cutters that are coming from the millennials that are essentially getting rid of their primary television service or not subscribing to one in the first place. But if you see pay television, there are pockets of growth if you take a more global view to it. But what is growing is definitely not the primary television service. If you take a global view, yes, there is growth, both on the advertising as well as on subscription side. Now you'll have different markets working differently. You'll have emerging markets like India, where you have double-digit growths. You'll have markets like the Middle East, where you have low single-digit growths. If you don't take the last 6 months into account, you still see there is growth. And you'll have markets in the US that is actually struggling when it comes to pay TV. They're probably at low single-digit growths, if at all. However, it is growing. There is growth. But what is the growth story is definitely the OTT video, which you see on the right. And whether it's streaming in terms of access revenues on streaming or subscription revenues, or the online video advertising, both are demonstrating very strong growth across the globe. The OTT spending growth is double digits wherever you look in the globe. And Middle East, yes, we are starting from a small base, but the growth that we expect in OTT spending is phenomenal. So what is the consumer behavior that's driving this OTT growth? There is clearly binge viewing, which essentially are users who are watching 2 or more episodes of a drama series together. And if you look at how many of those access on a monthly basis, you take a global survey of it, then that's at least 40% of the people who are aged 18 to 24, 40% of those are doing binge viewing on a monthly basis. What kind of content are they consuming? And that genre of content, in our view, differs on which demographic you look at. If you look at the young 8 to 11-year-olds, you'll find it's between stream television, which is the red one, and games. So gaming and stream television are actually at par when you look at 8 to 11-year-olds. When you take it a little further and you take 12 to 14-year-olds, streaming is still big, but that gaming is then replaced with drama scripted series. So this is your traditional scripted content that you typically have seen on linear television. When you look at 12 to 14-year-olds, that's what replaces gaming as the top 2 content genres that are being consumed on a non-linear basis. And if you go a step further to 15 to 18, their consumption patterns are not very different than the 12 to 14-year-olds. What are the drivers of this growth? No surprises here. It is broadband access, it is connected devices, but it's also the price-value equation. Think of a primary television service connection in a market like US, and the entry point in terms of price that you need to get into a connection of DirecTV or Comcast. That's a significant barrier when it comes to a new subscriber saying, how much of my content consumption is going to be on a linear basis? Am I happy with not being part of that and really trying to cover all or most of my entertainment needs on a non-linear basis through binge viewing? Now the only big question mark that remains is live sporting events. Live sporting events is probably one part of the content genre where they feel the need to go back to that primary television service connection. Outside of that, they feel very happy when it comes to scripted content with the kind of trends that we are seeing with the millennials. Many of them don't feel the need for a primary television service connection at their home. And that's driven by the price and value equation in their own mind in terms of what value they put to that primary television service in a bundled environment. And finally, the content and user experience. The nimble OTT players have somehow managed to get themselves a superior user experience when it comes to the traditional giants. Now, traditional giants are moving extremely fast and playing catch up, but if you talk about Netflix and the personalization of Netflix, which creates at least 30 to 40% of their subscriptions, then that personalization service, I think, is better and configured much before many of the others have followed suit. So from a user experience and content perspective, there is still a world of difference between the two. The OTT competition will continue to increase. We are already seeing a plethora of players enter, and we will continue to see that wherever there is growth of the kind of 98% per annum growth, you would find the competition increasing significantly. In this whole world of OTT and a parallel world of the primary television service of the linear television, there are three content ecosystems that are emerging in parallel. On the left-hand side, you have the content that's been created for theater or for TV, which is the traditional content, which is professional, delivered by all the content majors. You have original digital content, which is the House of Cards and all the series that either Amazon Prime or Netflix are commissioning that go straight to digital. And third, and definitely not the least, is the amateur content that you see on the multi-channel networks on the online distribution platforms like YouTube, which, in terms of time being spent, is quite significant and not different for the young generation when you compare it to the time being spent on linear. In following these trends, you see all the major broadcasters investing into each of these. Going into original digital content, whether it is Warner Brothers creating Blue Ribbon. At the same time, you also see broadcasters chasing for all the multi-channel networks which host all the amateur content that you see on online distribution platforms. So today, if you look at Europe or if you look at US, you will struggle to find a good leading multi-channel network that's not already been acquired by one of the major broadcasters or content majors. So the race for multi-channel networks is super fast and is yet, if you may, it's yet to sort of, that wave and that push is fully yet to sort of arrive in the Middle East. But we think it's just around the corner. Another interesting thing that's coming on the amateur content front is just new content genres that never existed before. Here are three examples that we located of successes in South Korea. PewDiePie is a multi-channel network or an emerging artist that basically just films himself playing games and puts it on YouTube, and he gets amazing success. This genre didn't exist in the past. Now the key question, is this genre amateur only? How much time does it take out of the time people spend watching video? And there is a fair amount of time being spent here watching video. The other is makeup entertainment. So you have people, you have women teaching how to do makeup by just videoing themselves or just putting themselves on the camera doing makeup, and again attracting significant amount of interest on the distribution channels, on the global distribution channels. So we see clearly these new genres, content genres emerging from a very different place. Middle East is not away from the snacking culture. It's very much part of the snacking culture, and you see that in terms of the views that you see in the videos that emerging artists publish on YouTube. Be it U-Turn or Telfaz or Karabish, the number of views that they're attracting and the time they're attracting of video consumption is quite significant and cannot be ignored anymore. All of this OTT is driving an explosion of content creation. So if you are a content producer, you're in a great place because the number of commissioners of content are just increasing every day and significantly increasing at a rapid pace, and the amount of content being produced is just skyrocketing, be it the number of series being produced in the US market for linear or VOD, or it be the digital video which is being produced by amateurs on Facebook or YouTube and published there. There's just a huge content explosion. So what's the impact on content markets? There is significant investment in exclusivity. And now exclusivity not only for sporting rights, but exclusivity of many kinds where you have originals being commissioned for that exclusivity. And what Netflix and Amazon Prime are doing and what Warner Brothers is doing with Blue Ribbon are all examples of distributors like Netflix and Amazon Prime going into originals and understanding the value of investing in exclusivity. Revenue models are diversifying. You know, we talked about the price-value equation, and that price-value equation is a very important one when you're living in a highly fragmented world of video consumption. New content genres are emerging, and finally, the last thought that I would want to leave is while these ecosystems today are running parallel, the key question is, do we see a crossover of these on the television screen as more and more television screens get connected? So when more and more television screens get connected, what are we looking at? Are we looking at an unbundled environment where the power or the value of somebody like Comcast bundling everybody for the user is being put to question? Are we looking at a scenario where the amateur videos that are being today consumed in online distribution platforms, should they form part of the primary television relationship because of the amount of time that is taken from people? And those are questions that are yet to be answered because they integrally lie in the minds of the millennials. Unless we can threadbare the minds of the millennials and answer the question, when they become families, how will they behave? Will they continue to behave like what they do today as millennials? Or will they start behaving a little bit more like us or like me, where we have a primary television service connection and maybe two at home? And that's the key question that will determine how the crossover of this world emanates in the future. But what we are definitely seeing, irrespective, is something from a EPG to something which is more of a world of Disney, this is what we call the unbundling, if you may, of the TV experience. In markets where the price-value equation for a primary television service like the US is quite high and that price-value benefit is not very clear, I think the unbundling we'll see faster than in markets like Europe, where the barrier or the cost barrier for a primary television service is not as exorbitant as the US. So I think we'll see different stages of the unbundling also as more and more TV screens get connected. Now, whether this is a 5-year journey or a 10-year journey is difficult to answer because it again goes back to the minds of the millennials. But in markets such as the Middle East where we stay, where the younger demographics are the majority, one would argue that this would take a faster pace than many of the other markets. So what is required to succeed in this place, right? There is huge amount of fragmentation. There is all different models coexisting. You have different kind of content ecosystems coexisting. What does it take to succeed? Now, if the millennials start behaving more in terms of how families do today, then I think the primary television service is here to stay for a long time. The capabilities that are required are of very different kind if we were to believe that the millennials are going to unbundle the entire environment. If that is the case, then the nimble OTT players have an edge ahead because they understand the capabilities that are required to move in that direction, because that's what the capabilities they've grown up with. But again, the key question lies in how the millennials think. Unfortunately, we cannot even survey them because they themselves don't know today how they will behave when they become families. So at this point, I would like to bring in our panelists to sort of start answering, or at least giving us their view of their perspective of how they see the worlds converging and how do they see the millennials behaving when it comes to video.
The forum ended with a panel discussion with media specialist Medea Nocentini, who is VP of Corporate Development at OSN, Mohamad Yehya, the director of TV projects at Majid Entertainment, and Dimitri Metaxas, who is the managing director of MENA at Resolution Media.
Back, first of all, to capture Dimitri, because and have a little bit of think about this, the advertising sector and the move towards digital, particularly in this region, the kind of speed we're at, and whether I'm being a bit ambitious with my projections. Dimitri, do you want to...
Okay, well, excuse me, so I think you're talking in terms of the growth rates that you're forecasting on mobile, for instance. Look, I think overall, the good news is that our stats that we monitor on a regular basis are very much in line with everything that you've talked about. And of course, we fully harness PwC's reports, going back to the digital sandstorm and all the other digital reports that you talk about. I think I'll start with just sort of saying one thing, and it kind of leads on from what Jayant was talking about in his presentation. If we focus on the UAE, media consumption per day is amongst the highest in the world. So people are spending time with media here at levels that you know, we see with the most mature markets on the planet. So to give you an example, back in 2013, there was over 11 hours per day being spent with a media touch point, and that's grown to now over 12 hours per day. So that's 1 hour extra of media time in the space of 2 years. That's kind of a crazy situation to be in. And far and away, that growth is attributed to one thing, and that is the mobile device. Everything else has been relatively static or in decline, and it's really the mobile device that has been the area of growth that we've witnessed, you know, and will continue to witness over the next 5 years. Now, what are they doing on their mobile devices? We know fundamentally that they're on there using social media, and they've been doing that for a while, but that's been relatively mature. But the area of growth, so again, we're spending another hour per day spending, you know, on media and on our mobile devices, it's on video consumption. So it's far and away, for somebody such as myself or anybody here in the room that's involved in entertainment and media, your future will be largely dependent on your ability to engage your audiences through that mobile device with really sort of entertaining video content. And that's, you know, a realization that has yet to resonate across perhaps a lot of us, a lot of our companies. We're still sort of lagging to catch up. So the data that you're talking about, the sort of 37% growth year on year, is absolutely right and spot on. From an advertising perspective, I'll just sort of add another point to this, which is we're spending over a third of our day, 4 hours on mobile, right? So we're doing a lot of things on different devices, and we're consuming video. But in terms of ad dollars, or marketing spend or investment, I hate using the term ad dollars because a lot of what we do is not necessarily advertising anymore, but a lot of the marketing investment, if I can use that term, is less than 4%. So you've got over 33% of our time on mobile and less than 4% of marketing investment as a percentage share of the total pie being spent through mobile devices. So if you're a marketer in this room, that's huge opportunities. That's like the big opportunity gap that you've got today.
And what's the barrier to that change? What's the resistance? I mean, you believe it, and many of your colleagues believe it, but clearly educating your clients, your customers, is proving more difficult. What's the barrier?
Well, you know, I think a lot of the barriers are ones that we probably all recognize. Jayant talked a bit about capabilities. The capabilities I've been here in Dubai now for well over 10 years, and I've been very privileged to be a part of this digital decade of growth. So over 10 years ago, there was less than $1 million of an industry, and today we're looking at nearly $700 million in 10 years. So that's been fantastic to be a part of that sort of growth. And you said yourself, probably by about 2019, we're looking at over $2 billion. So this is a really sizable industry now, and you know, will continue to grow. But the capabilities lag. And I've been very much a part of the recruitment process and developing capabilities in digital. You know, it's been an ongoing process. There's a lack of talent in the region when it comes to sort of coming out of universities when it comes to digital, although that talent has been reduced somewhat. So that's definitely an issue ongoing, but one that we've talked about quite a lot. The second, I would say, is of course research and measurement. And this continues to be an issue. I have candid conversations with some of the global advertisers, and they'll tell me straight up that the compliance requirements are not being fulfilled, and some of the measurement as a result is not perhaps up to speed. We're talking a bit about people meters continuing to stutter in television. We're talking about Arabic titles, press titles still not being audited. You know, the majority of them are still not audited today. And then of course you've got all this new issues when it comes to the digital space, which is viewability, ad fraud, and all that sort of family of concerns that we still need to address from a technical standpoint. And those two issues together are sort of creating the third one, which I'll talk about, which is kind of a natural resistance, which is that the size of the marketing industry in this region per capita is very small compared to other parts of the world. So I'll give you an example. The per capita advertising dollar spend in our region here is about less than $100 per year. In the US, to give you a comparable, and I know the US is, to give you the top limit, is well over $567, right? So the ad dollars per person is still very, very small because of the other issues that we talked a bit about before. So I think all of those elements coming together have had an impact.
Excellent. So Mohamad, I'm going to bring you here in on this. And so I introduced Mohamad in the presentation, but he's at Majid Entertainment, which is part of Abu Dhabi Media, launching, I don't know if it's quite launched yet, the new TV channel. And I think all the things that we've been discussing here have probably been quite relevant to your thinking about how do you make money, where are you selling it. I don't know if you describe the sort of strategy that you're looking to adopt for around the relaunch of Majid.
Thank you, Philip. Allow me first to introduce Majid Entertainment so they can know more what we are talking about.
Yeah.
So Majid Entertainment is a company specialized in edutainment content services for kids. Our platforms include a TV station, magazine, e-learning and video gaming platforms, and also facilities management. Majid as a brand is designed to inspire and entertain kids and all over the Arab world. And Majid Entertainment as a company is the first to produce in the Middle East more than 300 hours of original content from our own library and from our own IPs. So, your question was again?
Yes, well, I'm thinking, you know, you're looking to try and approach, or are you trying to approach something not in the sort of traditional way of just sort of producing a channel to go on sort of a linear broadcast, but you're looking at other mechanisms and I guess leading into how you're looking to sort of monetize that brand outside of TV?
First of all, we are trying to, the question I think why we're investing in our IPs, why we are producing more IPs and how we can make money out of it. Advertisers in the Middle East, and especially in our region, spend almost 1.5 or 2% towards children's platform. While you mentioned the US, while in the US they only last year they spent almost between 15 to 17 billion trying to advertise for children and talk to children. So we studied the market and we noticed that we need to present more options for the advertisers. We need to present some local IPs that will reflect and will appeal between all the IPs coming from, all the characters coming from the Western world. We are trying also not only to generate the IPs and use it in the traditional way, we are trying to create branded content. We are trying to integrate consumer product within our shows and within our IPs. We are trying to work also on merchandising, as I mentioned, consumer product, theme parks, distribution. We're investing in the digital world. We're building our own platform. We were going to launch a new platform by 2016. And we are helping also the global brand and the local brand operating within our area to try to reach the target audience, their target audience easily, and we are giving them more options.
And you seeing the way we just described mobile as being a pretty critical component of your future growth?
What we are doing now, we are trying also to create an original content, especially for mobile. Yeah. We are trying to invest in the mobile platforms, either through producing something new, following up the global trends, it's not always relevant to our culture, so we are trying also to create something more relevant to the local culture, and we are trying also, it's always about presenting a good media and communication strategy to the advertisers and to everyone who wants to spend. This is, I think, the only way. It's either following the global trends or going to the digital or to the traditional TV. I believe that as long as we present a new creative communication media plan to our consumers and to our audience and to the advertiser, we'll be able always to generate money in this region.
It was interesting, just, I mentioned the Iftar Simpson. They're chosen not to go on a channel at all and just go on a YouTube approach. And one of the things they found challenging was that children wouldn't watch it for an hour anymore. This, I think, the thing that Jayant was saying, this snacking culture. And so they found that... oh, it's on free to air as well? Oh, okay. Ah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think what's happening now, even with the shows on the TV, all the broadcasters and even all the IP owners are trying always to create short formats.
Yeah.
Short formats, 3 to 5 minutes, working much better on the digital side. But for us, from our part, we are trying to create an original content dedicated only for the digital platform. Yep. But Iftar Simpson is on free to air all over the Middle East, okay. And also on the short formats on the digital.
I'm just thinking of the thing they just relaunched on the short form. But I think it's been a very successful launch that I've understood, and that but it's this kind of snacking culture. Jayant, do you want to get something from Medea?
Yes. So Medea being, I guess, being the big elephant in the Middle East, right?
Thank you.
With OSN. I mean, how do you see the pay TV market evolving? I mean, given the fact that it hasn't reached its full potential, if you look at how many people can afford pay TV and how many people are on pay TV, and at the same time, we see this whole explosion of the ODT environment. Do you think, given the whole backdrop of ODT, short-form video, original digital content creating, do you think in that backdrop, the Middle East will move forward in achieving its full potential of pay TV, or will that be limited? What are the challenges that you see for the Middle East?
Thank you, Jayant. We do, at OSN, otherwise we'd not be there, we do see a huge potential for pay TV. We're still penetrated overall in the single digit, basically, if we combine ourselves and be in the main two players. Of course, the region has a specific outlook in terms of affordability and in terms of concentration of wealth compared to other continents out there. So in our region, we do have a premium segment which is bigger than the mass market, or the so-called, in other regions, mass market. So it's a little bit difficult to sustain pay TV when it comes to lower ARPU or lower subscription prices, and that's something that for us, being in the pay TV business for a while, it's a no-brainer. So that's where OSN sees most of the potential for traditional pay TV subscription. So it's a very premium service. It's almost like a brand connection, a very strong brand connection with our subscribers. It's a family type of consumer products, and that's where we are putting most of our effort, at least in the short to medium term. Then we have been, and again, for the ones that have been in the market for a while, we have been the first launching an OTT platform. It's called OSN Play. It's still tied to the subscription business, the main subscription business. So we have seen the surge of OTT consumption very early on. When it comes to OTT providers disjointed by that premium proposition, it's challenging. We have our own OTT platform, which is called Go Online TV. It was Go by OSN before. We're not making up stories. It's challenging for everybody in the space. I'm sure you know of all the other OTT platforms, and that's mainly because of payment gateways, very low penetration of credit cards, and I would say an habit of watching content online for free, being it on YouTube or being it pirated. So it's a challenging space, in particular for pure online players. We have an advantage at OSN because we have economies of scale in terms of getting enough investment on content, let's say we can leverage that, of course, with studios and with other players such as Turkish producers, Arabic content producers, and so forth. Of course, there is a huge potential. You have shown us a lot of those data that we monitor on a daily basis, which is younger population, high penetration of mobile devices and smartphones, high uptake of all those new consumer products that are purely online. So we do see that as an opportunity, and convergence will be perfect for a player like a pay TV traditional company, because again, it becomes a lot of ARPU potential, a lot of extraction of value from families, basically.
Is there a fear, Medea, that one of your platforms is cannibalizing the other? How are you, in your consumers' minds, trying to keep that separation? I remember at the launch time, it was always, because you could go on the OSN Play, it was quite a lot less than going for the overall platform. So it struck me as quite difficult to try and distinguish that in the consumers. How's it gone in the 7 years since you launched it?
Thank you, Philip. It's a great question. We have debates on a daily basis, I think, internally at OSN on the subject. The first rule is better to cannibalize ourselves than to leave the pie for somebody else. And I would say, secondly, and you can tell us if it's the same in the US, but the data that I'm monitoring, even from the US market, have shown that Netflix has not impacted as much as Link TV. Dish network cord cutting, if you wish. So again, the traditional SVOD library proposition is a complement to a TV viewing at a family level, which is a premium experience. So in that respect, we are not too worried about this kind of proposition. Actually, we see it as a complement, and if it comes from us, better, we make more money. If it comes from somebody else, it's fine. We'll try to distribute those propositions as well to our customers. When it comes to cannibalizing with a full proposition at a lower price, then of course it becomes a different. So the typical entry pack discussion, it's always very tricky. There are companies out there that have tried, even in the past when Orbit and Showtime were competing with ART, for the ones that have been here for a while. Lowering the entry point, it's very risky. That's what's cannibalizing our revenues. But again, it's all about the full size of the pie. So we'll see how it goes. And
Mohamad, I guess sort of slightly broader than just Majid, if you can cast your mind to the rest of Abu Dhabi Media. I mean, is clearly all the things that they're putting forward in your business? It's been quite interesting, the model you may describe it, because all this capabilities thing is quite interesting. You know, existing businesses find it quite hard to change. So you may describe to the guys here how you're doing something that's quite a spearhead for Abu Dhabi Media, but you've done it in essentially moving yourself out of the organization. Maybe it's quite instructive.
I think, and allow me to say, I learned this from a gentleman here, Mr. Fadi Ismail. He once told me that bureaucracy is always what's killing any kind of business and killing creativity. That when they asked me to launch the channel, and when they asked me to launch a project related to kids to fill the gap and to fill the strong demand in the market, the first thing I asked the management in Abu Dhabi Media that, all right, but we need to do it outside the compound, we need to do it as a separate company and separate entity, and not only as another channel, another add to the bouquet. And I think due to this fact, we were able to launch a very challenging project in almost less than 8 months. So, we started the project together almost in February, and we were live on air on 25th of September. Since then, the feedback is perfect because we had to take decisions on spot. We didn't wait to papers to get signed. We didn't get. I think as long as we keep things simple, as long as we focus on the production part, on the creativity, without taking lots of time to get things within the system and get the approvals from different levels. I think this is the only way where you can take decision on spot, create something. We are in the digital age, so we don't have time to lose. Things are moving fast, we need to be fast. So yeah, this is what we did.
Yeah, and I think it's an extremely sort of valuable lesson because everyone here and most people in the industry, they're intelligent people. They can see what's going on, but you're stuck within the sort of both the culture and the fear and everything within your own organisation. I just remember in the UK many years ago working for one of the large sort of, B2B publishers, and they were really struggling to do anything online. It was always the editors would just not do the right content. It was huge barriers. So they ended up buying a small business and creating their own, putting it somewhere else, hiring completely different people, and creating their own worst competitor. And it was called, I won't say what it's called, but it became much bigger in the end than their existing business because they were very nimble. They sucked in all the classified advertising online from its core publications. It's a worrying thing to do because you are, to start with, cannibalizing your own business. But essentially, if you don't do it, there will be somebody else who does. And so that was quite.
If you allow me to add another point, it's also the same system can work also to generate money, to generate income, to monetize the IPs. How? Instead of working through a rate card or instead of working through within a box, we can be more creative. We can take decision on spot. We can, if a client wants to integrate his product within, an event, a show, a live performance, we can do it directly without going back to the guidebook and going back to find out, all right, this can be done, but you need to, go to the normal procedure. Being flexible is always the right thing to do, especially now, especially in this media business.
Okay. And Dimitri, you mentioned one of the barriers, which we've discussed quite a lot, about the lack of, accountability, lack of research, lack of measurement. I think both in to some extent in TV, but also in the internet. What's progressed or is there anything progressing along that line?
No, there is actually. I kind of came out of a long session with Ipsos, who are very much kind of driving a lot of the measurement aspects, and they're really, I think, going to start pushing a lot, let's say, more robust passive electronics sort of measurement within households. So we've been plagued a lot of issues throughout the past when it's come to truly understanding household consumption across multiple devices, and they're kind of ironing out a number of different things there, which I think will be, I think will act as a real acceleration or a catalyst towards us better understanding how people are consuming content across multiple screens. So one of the ways that they're doing it is just through your mobile device, through passive. You have capabilities through your mobile. You just download apps in a household across different devices, and it's able to read and understand which screens you are consuming content, what that content is, and then be able to feed back. The initial studies that we've done, and we've done a couple of these with partners, and I'll just go to one specifically, like in the UAE, is over 2/3 of people under the age of 40 are consuming TV with mobile, right, regularly, right? So what ends up happening there is that you have to start thinking about your primary attention. Where is that going to? And we're seeing this heavy multitasking that's sort of coming through. Particularly the younger they get, the more multitasking they are, and the less attention they're paying to that TV screen, and the more that they're paying to this small screen in their hands that they're interacting with. So that has huge implications, I think. I think that we all have to understand, and I know from a marketing standpoint, we talk a little bit about how do we extend the content experience or the marketing strategy to sort of utilize both screens in certain ways, because you can't necessarily interact with the TV screen in the way that you can interact with your mobile device. And I think from a content production standpoint, you need to be thinking the same thing. And we've thought, or we've witnessed now recently a lot of startup businesses that are coming through that are content creators from this region that are primarily focused on the mobile device. They don't care about anything else. They really don't. They don't care about TV, they don't care about any linear content, schedule-based content. They recognize it's all content on demand and it's going to be through that mobile device. And they're doing very well. And it's really, it's early days yet, but you're seeing sort of the exponential growth rates and the kind of eyeballs that they're getting and the sort of content they're consuming on a regular basis. So we're very much at the beginning of that process, there's no doubt. I think, like you said, 2019 is going to look vastly different in this part of the world than today when it comes to the type of content that we're consuming. Okay. And which device or which screen is our primary consumption device.
So it's a big bugbear of OSN.
Yeah, actually, I would like to add a little bit of color to Dimitri's comment. At OSN, we have spent the last at least 5 years investing in our own primary research, and very recently, 1 year ago, we launched our own audience measurement system. Of course, the OSN audience is, again, a little bit more premium and a little bit more family-oriented than the world out there. But it's very interesting to actually see what are the genres that, or the titles even, that are watched on the TV screen from a family viewership perspective, and what's watched on mobile or online in general. It's actually pretty different, not only because of individual versus family, but also in particular in this region, and because of the traditions and the culture. Certain things are just not appropriate for a big TV screen, and get consumed more at an individual level, versus when it comes to a family appointment, certain other things are watched. And we do have now real-time data on all the screens. Of course, again, it's a closed audience, but it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I think on the content genre bit, maybe one question for Mohamad and Medea. With the new content genres that you see now on multi-channel networks, do you see them as being irrelevant to where you are? Do you see them as being a threat, or do you see them as being someone integrated partner? I mean, what's your view on that trend?
Not a threat at all. Actually, we have been in touch with a lot of those companies, such as U-Turn, Karabish. They have huge success on YouTube, and that's the first step for a brand as those getting out there and get some traction, a brand recognition, if you wish. Same as it happened for Awesomeness TV in the US. Very similar story. At a certain point, they got acquired by Dish Network, and that's what happened. So that could be something that could happen, or they could create windows of content, some content very good to have on YouTube for free, and some other perhaps a bit more premium, or you can play with different strategies. My suggestion would be for emerging, and I'm not sure how many of you in the audience are emerging content producers, but my suggestion would be, when you start producing content, it's good to have a long-term strategy, and not put everything for free out there, just because advertising, again, it's growing very fast, but it's still not, in terms of size, a huge amount of money. So it's good to have options, and it's good to add more revenue streams to your content production revenues.
Great.
We go back to the strategy. It's all about the strategy of production. If you want to produce content to be aired for free on the internet, on YouTube, it's part of your strategy. If you want to produce a content that you want to invest in, and you want to generate and monetize and generate revenue, it's all about the strategy. It's all about the plan from the beginning, and it's all about what you want to deliver, what messages you want to spread, and why you are creating this content.
Right.
If I can just add on this, I think fundamentally what I have kind of witnessed, and I think maybe a lot of people will agree, is that we just have to, as an industry, be much more flexible when it comes to the sort of pricing and how we charge for the content. Sometimes people don't want to necessarily have those bundled packages where it's a free-for-all. Sometimes people don't even necessarily want to buy. They may download an app for free, and then they end up literally buying small little snackable pieces of content, and they're purchasing that individually. As long as an industry we create, the access, the ease of access. Quite right, as you said earlier, overcoming the credit card issues or the payments. So tying up with, great strategies I've seen have been tying up with telcos, for instance, to put the cost of content on their existing, internet bills or charge. People will respond. They do respond, I think, very positively if you give them options and you give them, ways to be able to purchase the content in the ways that they prefer. And I think that's where, as an industry, we need to catch up a little bit.
Great. Okay. So conscious a little bit of time, guys, but we'll happily take some questions or even observations from the floor to panelists. I think is there a roving mic? There's a gentleman just over here on my left.
My name is George Yehya. I'm with Cinetat International. We're in content production. I think Philip brushed the subject of American-made content that has really taken over the world. Yeah. And many parts of the world want to imitate, but there's always something lacking everywhere about why is it that no one can come up to the point where we can make content that can rival what's coming out of the US. Now, my question is, the fact that my company is interested here, this is our first time attending the DIF, and is the fact that, is there any kind of support that is here in UAE, in Dubai, in the region, whereas we can produce content that's not only can be seen as locally made content, but the kind of content that anyone in the world would want to see? I mean, given the fact that locally made contents will, certain locally made contents will always be local no matter what you do. What I'm talking about is the kind of content that not only can be seen as made in Dubai or UAE or Abu Dhabi, but the kind of content that when you show it to some TV in US or in Europe, they say, I want to buy this. What kind of support is there? Mostly from the companies, from the TVs, from the distributors, from the financing companies that can help companies like ours that have planned for this kind of content.
Jayant, or who's best placed to answer?
I just want to share with you a small thing that happened with us earlier, I think 2 months ago during MIPCOM. We are part of, we introduced our content during MIPCOM. We were just trying to introduce Majid as a brand as a kids brand to the general audience and to the international market. The amount of companies, of distributors who contacted us who wanted to sign with us agreement to distribute our content all over the world, and especially in the US market and in Asia and Indonesia and everywhere. Actually, I was really surprised. We already signed a couple of an agreement. Our content will be, our locally produced content will be aired all over the world very soon. And I believe the reason is, when we started the production, we respected the viewers. We said we want to reduce the gap between the production quality, between the local production and the international production. As long as you respect your audience, as long you focus on producing quality production, you will be always able to reach. You don't need any support. You don't need any government to come and support you or fund you. I believe is the right product, the proper product will always find a way to reach and to,
If I can add one comment, I cannot share many details, but just to give you a data point, at OSN we spend as much money for Arabic and Turkish dramas or movies that we spend on Hollywood movies, more or less. So I will say that it's starting, but it's a very interesting type of content. One example was a few years ago, Harim Sultan, and again we go back to quality of production and relevance for the region and for the diaspora that is out there consuming this type of content. Harim Sultan, which is a Turkish production dubbed in Arabic, has been a global phenomenon. So there is a lot of potential, and I would say not a lot of content yet that is monetizable.
And people around the world want to see more exotic backgrounds, want to know more about different culture. That's why at some point, you know, like for sure the Turkish drama, we have the Japanese cartoon 10 years ago, you have lots of things. We want to know more about different culture, and I think all over the world, people and viewers want to know more about our culture. We have lots of things to offer. But we need a proper production, a proper image, quality of image, and we need to, the technology is there, we just need to focus more on producing the right content in the right way.
Just to follow up quickly, for example, in the US, if a producer goes to ABC, CBS, NBC, the kind of support you get is when ABC, NBC, CBS, or whoever says, okay, I want to buy this, before it even gets produced. Now, if we approach one of you, for example, with a project, and it's not 100% like locally, you know, created content, not created content, but it's not like 100% like the kind of Arabic production or Turkish production or Indian production that you would expect to buy for your, would there be any kind of support saying, I would want to be on board with this, because it is a very expensive proposition to go ahead and produce a series of 10 episodes and spend millions of dollars and you don't know who's going to buy it. Now, if there is, let's say, a foundational support, let's say it's going to be created here and we're interested in showing it in the region, at least you have a certain foundation on which you can build for the rest of the world. That's the kind of support that I'm talking about, and I don't think I've heard an answer to that, with apologies.
Maybe we'll take that, you can, because you know quite a bit about this area, so maybe afterwards we'll get time to get another question in. There's a lady, second row. Did you
Hi, Liz Shackleton from Screen International. I just wanted to ask, with this shift towards video viewership and consumption of short formats, what does this mean for feature films in the region? Everywhere else in the world there's a shift towards online viewing, but feature films are holding up quite strongly. What are the trends in this region?
Shall I?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's certainly, look, there's been a massive resurgence in long-form content, right? So, you know, original series by HBO, Netflix, and so on have done really, really well. And I think, but, you know, that will always continue. What we've seen sort of emerging a lot more is extended content pieces or engagement that are being harnessed through the video, through mobile and other aspects. So you're not necessarily trying to say, although yes, you can watch long form content on your smaller screen, you defer to the bigger screen for that, right, if you have access to it. But it's how do you extend that experience? So it could be behind the scenes, it could be, you know, there's aspects that people who are really big fans of a piece of content want to engage with it beyond just that airing an episode or a film. And I think what you're starting to see, and I know this from a marketing perspective, a lot of the studios are getting really, really much more intelligent when it comes to how they extend the experience of a piece of content through multiple screens. So that's the kind of thing that we've seen. And I think here that will happen a lot more as we move forward. Just going back maybe to the gentleman's point, if I may, I think I understand the resistance that perhaps, or the frustration that maybe is coming through from your question, because I work with a lot of content producers, local ones, and I know that they've also faced similar challenges, but I think the next 5 years is going to open those floodgates dramatically. I've seen a lot of big investments coming through from the big companies like Disney's makers here now, for instance. Obviously, OSN is looking at a lot of interesting strategies where you're going to see a lot more local licensing of content. You are going to see more investment coming through. Why? Because it's a huge addressable market that we're all trying to fight for moving in the next 5 years. And a lot of that will have to be filled by locally produced, really good quality content. So there's no doubt that I think the next few years will be somewhat different from the previous 5, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's another, yeah, Faris.
Fadi Ismail, O3 Productions. To the panel, to Dimitri and Jayant in particular, the OTT, which is the theme of this panel, we know the challenges, we know that it is the area of growth, and we know some of those limitations, such as the payment, the culture of not paying, the culture of getting everything for free. How do we change, as a producer, my question is, how do we change that equation? Meaning, if we want to learn from the experiences of the other, was it when there is premium exclusive content on those platforms that subscribers started saying, oh, it's worth to subscribe? And if so, then the chicken or the egg question, how can this be monetized? It means those who are doing that, putting premium exclusive content on OTT, will have to lose for some time before they win. What's the answer to this dilemma?
Yep. So I think, Fadi, excellent question. I think if we can draw parallels in countries where they have successfully monetized or increased the overall monetization of that content. If we talk about countries like maybe South Korea or to a certain extent Australia, it has been driven a lot by the price-value equation, the online distribution platforms that offer you tidbits of buying. So you don't need to go and buy something big. If you like something, you watch it. If you want to watch another episode, go on, keep paying, buy another one. So the fundamental problem again comes back to the payment problems in the region, because for that you need a very solid payment mechanism to make it happen. Is Sadat that answer in the Saudi market very early to sort of say whether yes, it would be able to transcend those boundaries to become? But I guess if we take a leap of faith and we're saying that yes, the payment problem is being addressed through multiple channels, and if that is, then the other answer from the industry standpoint is the online distribution model. And it goes back to the discussion that Medea had around cannibalization. That cannibalization is going to happen one way or the other. Now, it's the question of who takes advantage of that cannibalization. And it's the price-value equation that goes back. Let it be burnt the first time on primary television, because that's where the value, that's where the money comes from, paying for that expensive content. So that has to exist. If that model breaks, the whole professional content and the investment behind professional content dies. But that has to stay and maybe grow. But at the same time, given the penetration in the region, I think both can happen in parallel. You can have a growth of the primary premium television, while at the same time you do tidbits of monetization. Unfortunately, advertising may not be the answer, because while advertising is growing, people who are eating from their advertising pool are growing faster.
Great. So the last comment from
One
Medea.
last comment. The data that we analyze officially are always limited to what we can monitor. In the region, we know probably 50% of users online have a VPN that they pay for, and they access content through VPNs, so we kind of lose track of what's going on after that moment. In our own estimation at OSN, we sized the Netflix penetration in the region. Netflix, as we speak, is probably the biggest OTT player in the region already. So just to say that the push, the anti-piracy push that government have already started focusing on, and us as broadcasters and multiple players, will help dramatically monetizing content and fulfill the dreams of having a content production industry, which is sizable.
Excellent.
With camera persons Allan, David and Daniyal Mohamad, this is Joanna Justin reporting for Manipal Dubai TV.